The last flower hadn't even touched her grave when my phone rang. It was her boss, and he whispered a sentence that split the world beneath my feet. "John, you need to see what your wife left behind." Before we go deeper, hit subscribe for me. These true marriage stories survive because of people like you. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I read them all. I didn't expect the world to feel this quiet. Not on a day like this. Not on the day I buried my wife. People say funerals are loud with grief, heavy with footsteps, filled with the rustle of tissues, and hands reaching out in sympathy. But all I could hear was the sound of my own breathing. Slow, hollow, uncertain. Emma should have been beside me, not inside a wooden box lowered into the ground. I remember gripping the edge of the casket, as if it were the last physical thing keeping her here. Her hair still smelled like lavender the night before she died. She smiled at me before going to bed softly, like someone who wanted to say something but no longer had the strength. I've replayed that smile 1,000 times in my head. When the ceremony ended, people touched my shoulder, some gently, some awkwardly, some only because they didn't know what else to do. I nodded mechanically. Every movement felt scripted, like I was acting in a scene I never rehearsed for. Then I heard my phone ring. I shouldn't have answered it. Not when the priest was still speaking. Not when the last handful of dirt was still warm above her. But something inside me, a tremor I couldn't explain, made me reach into my coat. The name on the screen froze my breath. Mr. Grant, Emma's boss. We weren't close. He was polite, reserved, professional. The kind of man who sent Christmas cards with short messages like, "Warm wishes, MG." Why would he call me now? I stepped away from the crowd. The wind bit at my face. My fingers shook as I swiped to answer. "John!" His voice cracked in a way I'd never heard. "Are you alone?" I looked back at the burial site, at Emma's mother, sobbing into a handkerchief, at Ethan staring at the ground, as if hoping it would swallow him too, at the cold marble vase where I had placed the last white rose. "Yes," I whispered. "What is it?" There was a long silence, too long. Then, "You need to come to her office, now. There's something you should see." My stomach twisted. "What kind of something?" He exhaled shakily. "The kind your wife didn't want you to know while she was alive." Every bone in my chest tightened. "What does that mean?" I demanded. But Mr. Grant didn't answer the question. He only repeated one sentence, quieter this time. "John Fry, whatever you thought you knew about her death, you don't." The world tilted. I felt the soil beneath my shoes shift as if refusing to hold me up. My fingers went numb. My throat tightened around air that refused to stay in my lungs. Behind me, someone called my name, Ethan maybe, but I couldn't look at him. I walked away from the grave, away from the mourners, away from the last place I would ever stand near my wife's body, because suddenly the grief wasn't the only thing in the air. Something darker was breathing beside it, something Emma left behind. And it wasn't finished with me. As I opened my car door, the wind carried a faint whisper, maybe imagined, maybe real. "Forgive me, John." The same words she mumbled in sleep 3 nights before she died. I didn't know then that those were the last truthful words she ever said to me. But I was about to learn why. And the truth waiting for me at her office would break the last piece of my life I thought was still intact. I drove without remembering the roads. It felt as if my hands were moving on their own, steering me toward the one place I was afraid to enter, the building where Emma spent most of her days, the place I had never thought twice about, the place I assumed held nothing but meeting rooms, spreadsheets, and quiet professionalism. But now, every brick looked different, like it was keeping a secret for her. The lobby lights hummed when I stepped inside. The receptionist, Maria, looked up, her expression softening the moment she saw me. She stood abruptly. Mr. Miller, I'm so sorry for your loss." Her voice trembled the way people sound when they're not just sorry for the death, but for something else tied to it. "Thank you," I murmured, though the words barely left my throat. "Where's Mr. Grant?" Maria glanced to the hallway almost nervously. "He's in her office. He hasn't left it since he called you." My chest tightened. Why would her boss be in her office? Why did he sound afraid? I moved down the hallway, and with every step, memories of Emma came crashing into me. The evenings she worked late, the soft light under our bedroom door, when she typed on her laptop, the exhaustion in her eyes she always brushed off with a smile. "Just work stress, John." She lied so gently, I never questioned it. When I reached her office door, I saw Mr. Grant through the glass, standing, rigid hands on the desk, as if bracing himself from collapsing. He looked up when I entered. "John," I had seen this man handle corporate crises without blinking, but now his eyes were red, his face pale, his jaw unsteady. "Oh, what's going on?" My voice sounded harsher than I intended. What did she leave behind? He walked around the desk and placed something in my hand. A small USB drive, black, unmarked, cold. My heart picked up speed. "This, he said, swallowing, "was in an envelope she logged in her drawer. It was labeled for you with today's date. Today, her funeral day." I stared at it, unable to speak. "There's more," he whispered. He opened the bottom drawer of her desk and handed me a notebook. Thin, worn bunches wrinkled from nights of being gripped too tightly. My breath caught. It was her handwriting on the cover. "If something happens to me." My vision blurred. "I didn't read the rest," Mr. Grant said quietly. "It wasn't my place. But she asked me explicitly to make sure this reached you. If she ever couldn't give it herself." Couldn't, not didn't. Couldn't. The word cut through me like ice. "Sit down, John," he murmured. "There's something else you should know." I lowered myself into her chair, Emma's chair. The cushion still held the faint curve of her body. The air smelled like her perfume, jasmine, and paper. Mr. Grant hesitated before speaking. "The day before she died, Emma came to me. She was shaking. I'd never seen her like that in 20 years. He exhaled, rubbing the back of his neck. "She told me she had done something unforgivable, and she didn't know how to face you." My lips parted, but no sound came out. "She said she wanted to fix it before anyone found out, that she didn't want the truth to destroy you." He looked away, as if replaying the moment. "And then she asked me a question I didn't know how to answer." I forced myself to ask, "What question?" He met my eyes, and his voice broke. "If a truth will kill someone you love, is it kinder to take it with you My entire body went cold. Those were the exact words I heard in the whisper at her grave. My hands trembled round the notebook. I didn't know she was in danger, he whispered. I didn't know she'd stop taking her medication that night. She told me she'd fix everything tomorrow. But tomorrow never came. The room tilted slow at first, then violently. Emma stopped taking her medicine. She chose to vanish before the truth could reach me. But what truth? I opened the notebook with shaking hands. The first page held only one line, carved into the paper, as if she pressed the pen too hard. Don't hate me, John. My chest cracked open. I flipped to the next page. I didn't know how to tell you about Ethan. The room spun. I couldn't breathe. Not here. Not in her chair. Not with her perfume in the air and her handwriting under my fingertips. John, Mr. Grant stepped forward. Maybe you should... But I stood abruptly, nearly knocking the chair over. I need to go. Take the USB, he urged. It explains more. I closed my hand around it so tightly. The metal edge dug into my skin. As I walked out of the office, Maria looked at me with a sadness that told me she too had sensed something was wrong before Emma died. The elevator doors closed, sealing me inside a small metal box, with nothing but the sound of my heartbeat and the notebook against my chest. I didn't read further. I couldn't, but one sentence burned through my skull. I didn't know how to tell you about Ethan, the world I knew, the family I loved, the foundation I stood on was beginning to crack, and the truth waiting in that notebook and on that USB would finish the breaking. I sat in the car for a long time before I could bring myself to insert the key into the ignition. The world outside looked normal. Cars passing, people walking, a child laughing somewhere down the street. Life continued indifferent to the fact that mine had just been split open. I held Emma's notebook on my lap like it was a living thing. Its weight felt wrong. Too heavy for paper. Too warm for something she should have never had to write. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. Eventually, I drove home slowly, mechanically, until the familiar shape of our house rose before me. The same house where Emma had lived, worked, loved, and suffered quietly beneath a lie she believed would destroy me. Inside, the silence felt unbearable. I placed the notebook on the dining table and just stared at it. The sunlight through the window hit the cover, illuminating the sentence she wrote with those desperate hands. If something happens to me... I swallowed hard and opened to the second page. I didn't know how to tell you about Ethan. My fingers tightened on the edges. Ethan. Our son. My boy. The one whose first bike I assembled on the kitchen floor. The one whose football games I drove 2 hours to watch. The one I carried on my shoulders at the beach when he was too tired to walk back to the car. The one I thought I would grow old watching become a man. My breath trembled as I turned the page. This time there was more writing. John, before you hate me, you need to know why I hid the truth. Not because I wanted to lie to you, but because I wanted to save you from something you didn't deserve. Go? My chest tightened. Save me from what? I turned to the next page, and Ethan came from a mistake I made 20 years ago. A mistake that should have never happened. A mistake I spent the rest of my life trying to protect you from. So, the words blurred. I squeezed my eyes shut, feeling the weight of 20 years crush against my ribs. A mistake. That's what she called it. But Ethan wasn't a mistake to me. He was my son. When I opened my eyes, another line waited for me.
I never meant to betray you.
But I was young, angry, and convinced you would leave me if you knew the truth. I felt the old kitchen chair beneath me, the one Emma always sat in while she wrote grocery lists and birthday cards. I could almost see her there, head bent slightly, hair tucked behind one ear, as she scribbled her thoughts onto paper. But now, all those lists and cards felt like debris from a collapsed world. I turned another page. I didn't know I was pregnant until it was too late. And when the man came back into my life, he didn't want Ethan because of love. He wanted him because of what you could give. A coldness crept into my spine. The man, her past, the one who returned shortly before she died. He threatened to tell you everything unless I paid him. I was terrified, not of losing money, but of losing you. Emma's handwriting shook here, the ink smudged, as if her tears had fallen right onto the page. I felt something inside me fracture. She had been alone in this, completely alone, and she believed I couldn't forgive her. She didn't know. Forgiveness had always been my first instinct for her. My thumb brushed the margin where her pen had dug too hard. I turned the page. I met with him last week. I thought I could convince him to leave us alone. But he wouldn't. He said he would tell Ethan himself. He said the boy had a right to know. The boy. Not our boy, just the boy. My stomach twisted. Emma must have been terrified. Realized something that night. If I stayed alive long enough for him to tell the truth, you would hate me. Ethan would hate me. Our family would die either way. My throat tightened painfully. She had truly believed, that the only way to save us was to destroy herself. I turned the next page with trembling fingers.
So I did the only thing I could.
I stopped taking the medicine. My heart would give out on its own. No questions, no autopsy, no shame. I dropped my face into my hands, letting the grief break open inside me. My breath shook. My chest heaved. The notebook blurred in front of me. She chose death to protect me, to protect Ethan, to protect a family she thought she had already fractured. And I hadn't even known she was drowning. After a long moment, I wiped my face and forced myself to turn another page. The handwriting was smaller here, fainter. Promise me one thing, John. Don't tell Ethan the truth. Let him live without this burden. Let him believe he was born into love, not into a mistake. His tears stung the corners of my eyes. How could I keep that promise? How could I lie to my son? How could I carry this alone? At the bottom of the page, one final line waited. A line that stole the last steady breath from my lungs. And if one day he asks why I left, tell him I loved him too much to stay. The room swayed. The walls blurred. I closed the notebook, clutching it to my chest like a wound. Emma hadn't died because of her illness. She died because of her love. But the truth she tried to bury was rising to the surface. And I wasn't sure I had the strength to face the next part. Because if the notebook shattered my heart, the USB in my pocket would shatter what was left of it. I sat there for a long time, the closed notebook pressed against my chest. as if I were holding on to Emma herself. The house felt unreal, too quiet, too still, too aware of what I had just read. Her handwriting lingered in my mind, looping through my thoughts, like a ghost tracing circles on glass. But the notebook wasn't the end. Inside my pocket, the USB felt heavier than metal, like it was carrying the weight of her last breath. I looked toward the lamp on the corner table. Emma always kept it on for warmth in the evenings. Now, when I switched it on, the room glowed with the soft, golden light she loved. It almost felt like she was here in the quiet, waiting for me to sit down and hear what she couldn't say while she was alive. My laptop waited on the dining table. I hesitated before opening it. I wasn't ready. But grief never asks if you're ready. I plugged in the USB. A single audio file appeared. For John, if I can't tell you myself. My chest tightened so sharply I had to grip the edge of the table just to steady myself. I pressed play. At first, only the sound of her breathing filled the room. Shallow. Fragile. As if she had recorded this during one of her worst nights. Then her voice came through soft trembling. John, if you're hearing this, it means I wasn't strong enough. I closed my eyes. The sound of her crushed me. It reached into my ribs and pulled every thread inside me loose. I wanted to tell you, she whispered. I tried. Every night. But every time I looked at you, you were kind. You were gentle. You were still the man who held my hand in the rain when I was terrified we'd lose Ethan before he was born. My throat tightened. I remembered that night, the storm, the hospital, my arms around her as she cried into my shirt. I knew if I told you the truth, she continued, you would stay. You would forgive me. You always forgive me, John, even when I didn't deserve it. A faint sob escaped her before she whispered the next part. But forgiveness wouldn't stop the world from tearing us apart. I opened my eyes slowly, staring at the laptop screen, as if her voice were etched onto it. I didn't want Ethan to look at you differently. I didn't want you to look at him differently. I didn't want the love in this house to become something painful. The audio crackled a little, and then, he's yours, John. Maybe not by blood, but in every way that matters. You are the only father he's ever had. I covered my mouth as a tremor went through me. Her voice softened, almost becoming a whisper. But the man who hurt us, who threatened us, he came back. And he wouldn't stop. He said he would tell Ethan the truth. He said he would tell you everything. He said the world deserved to see the family I built fall apart. A quiet gasp escaped her. That's when I realized I was the weakest link, the one who made the mistake, the one who brought the danger, the one who could remove it. No, no, no! I couldn't let him destroy you, or Ethan, or the life we made, so I made the choice you'll never forgive me for. My heart stopped. I let my illness take me. A long pause filled the room. I could hear her trying not to cry. I stopped my medication. Please don't hate me for that. I didn't see another way. Not one that wouldn't break you worse than losing me. The breath she took sounded agonizing. I thought, maybe if I left quietly, the truth would die with me. The man would stop. You would never have to know. Ethan would grow up believing he came from love, not from my mistake. Something inside me shattered slow and brutal. But I miscalculated something she whispered. The tone in her voice changed fainter, darker, filled with regret so deep I felt it in my bones. I didn't account for the fact that secrets always find their way home. My pulse quickened. I didn't account for the fact that you would come looking. Silence. Then her voice returned breaking. John, if you're hearing this, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But you need to understand. The truth you're holding now isn't the whole truth. My breath froze. What wasn't the whole truth? The audio continued, her words turning shaky, rushed as if she was running out of time. There's something I didn't write in the notebook. Something I couldn't. Because if Ethan ever found it, it would destroy him. My fingers dug into the table. John, the man who threatened me, he didn't just want money. The room felt suddenly smaller. He wanted Ethan. My heartbeat faltered. He said Ethan was the only thing in his life he'd ever created that meant anything. He said I stole 20 years from him. He said he had a plan, one that couldn't be undone. Cold sweat prickled my spine. He wasn't going to just tell Ethan the truth. Her voice broke into a sob. He was going to take him. The world around me dropped into a hollow silence. Emma inhaled shakily. I had to stop him. I had to protect our son, even if it meant leaving you behind. My chest burned. My eyes stung. My breathing turned shallow. The recording ended without a goodbye. Just silence. A silence heavier than her death. I stared at the laptop screen long after the audio stopped, unable to move, unable to think, unable to breathe through the magnitude of what I had just heard. She didn't die because she wanted to escape guilt. She didn't die because she was ashamed. She died because she believed it was the only way to keep our son safe from a man who wanted to claim him and wouldn't stop. Emma broke her own heart to protect ours. But she was wrong about one thing. The truth didn't die with her. It was alive now. And it was coming for us. I don't remember how long I sat there after the recording ended. Maybe minutes? Maybe hours. Grief has a way of twisting time until it becomes something unrecognizable. All I know is that when I finally pushed back from the table, my legs felt like they weren't mine. Emma was gone, but the man she feared, the man who threatened our family, he was still out there. And for the first time since she died, I felt something beneath the grief, a steady, rising heat. Not anger. Not yet. Something deeper. A kind of protective instinct sharpened by loss. I went upstairs to Ethan's room. The door was half open. Ethan sat on the floor, surrounded by framed photographs he had taken off the hallway wall. Pictures of him and Emma at the park at his graduation on his 10th birthday, when she baked that crooked chocolate cake he loved so much. He looked up and I stepped in. "Dad," he said, quietly, "why did Mom keep everything to herself? She always said she was fine. She always said she didn't want us to worry. But she must have been scared. And we didn't even know." His voice cracked at the end. I sat beside him. There were so many things I wanted to say. That Emma loved him more than anything. That she carried a burden no one should carry alone. That she died trying to protect him. But I couldn't say any of it. Not yet. Not until I knew how much truth would destroy him and how much would save him. So I placed a hand on his shoulder. "We'll understand her better together," I said softly. "Not all at once, but when the time is right." He nodded, wiping his eyes. "I miss her, Dad." "I know," I whispered. "There are wounds a father cannot close for his child. Only time can. But time moves slowly when love is ripped away." A few minutes passed in silence before Ethan spoke again. "Did Mom ever seem different to you? Like she was hiding something?" My heartbeat stumbled. He was too perceptive. His mother had given him her eyes and her intuition. "Yes," I admitted quietly, "especially in the last few weeks." "What do you think it was?" The truth rose in my throat like a stone. I couldn't give it voice, not until I understood everything. "Something she was afraid of," I finally said. "Something she didn't want us to face." Ethan swallowed hard. Then he whispered, "Do you think she died because of it?" The question hit me like a blade. I felt my jaw tighten. My fingers curled, my breath staggered. "She died trying to protect us," I said, the only truth I could give him without breaking him completely. Ethan looked down at the photograph in his hands, one where Emma had wrapped both arms around him, laughing freely into the camera. "Who would she need to protect us from?" he whispered. I felt a tremor rise in my chest. That question would destroy him one day, but not today. "I don't know yet," I lied softly, "but I'll find out." Ethan leaned into me, and for a moment I felt the weight of being a father, in its rawest form, being the shield, the anchor, the last honest thing left in a fractured world. After he fell asleep on the carpet, exhausted from grief, I gently carried him to bed and tucked the blanket around him the way Emma used to. Then I returned downstairs. The house felt different, like the walls were listening, like the shadows were waiting. I opened Emma's notebook again, this time not to read, but to search. There had to be something. A name, a clue, a place, a moment she shared with him. On the last page, in faint pencil, almost erased, I found it. Tuesday, 4:15 p.m., the cafe near 3rd Street. If he comes again, I don't know what he'll do. My pulse quickened. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through her messages. Most were deleted, but in the recently erased folder, one number remained. No name. Just a 7-word message. "We need to talk. You know why." Sent 3 days before she died. My hands trembled as I dialed the number. It rang once, twice. On the 3rd ring, someone answered, but they didn't speak. I could hear breathing, slow, steady, intentional. "Who is this?" I demanded. Silence. "Did you know my wife?" Still nothing. My grip on the phone tightened. "If you have anything to do with her death." A low laugh cut through the speaker. Soft. Mocking. Almost amused. Then a voice. Calm. Unsettlingly calm. "You should stop looking, John." My blood went cold. "Who are you?" "You don't want it to know." "What did you say to my wife?" A pause. "You'll find out soon enough." My heart pounded. "What do you want?" I whispered. Another pause. Then, "I want what's mine." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, breathing hard. "Mine," he said, "mine." He wasn't talking about money. He wasn't talking about Emma. He meant Ethan. I felt something shift inside me. Not fear this time, but a deeper, darker resolve. The kind a father feels when someone threatens his child. Emma died protecting Ethan, but I was still alive. And I would not let the man she feared finish what he started.
Cause
Whatever truth Emma died trying to bury, it was now rising fast, and the man on the phone had just confirmed it. He wasn't done with us, not even close. The night outside felt heavier when I stepped out of the house. Not colder, just heavier. As if the air itself sensed what I was about to do. I didn't tell Ethan I was leaving. I couldn't. He was still sleeping, curled up under the blanket Emma used to fold at the foot of his bed. I stood for a moment on the porch, listening to the wind shift through the trees, before getting into the car and driving toward 3rd Street, the place Emma had written about in her notebook. Her handwriting replayed in my head. If he comes again, I don't know what he'll do. The words carried a tremor, fear, regret, resignation. She had been cornered, and she faced it alone. I wouldn't make the same mistake. The cafe was nearly empty when I arrived. Just a dim light glowing above the entrance, and the soft hum of the espresso machine inside. I pushed open the door and scanned the room. Only one barista worked the late shift. A woman in her 30s, with tired eyes and a cautious smile. I walked up to the counter. "Excuse me," I said quietly. "I'm looking for someone who might have met with my wife here last week." The barista looked up sharply. "Your wife?" I swallowed. She passed away." Her face fell. "Oh, I'm so sorry." "Really?" Then she lowered her voice. "What did she look like?" I described Emma, her soft, brown hair, the way she tucked it behind her ear, her cardigan, her gentle smile, even when she was nervous. The barista nodded slowly. "Yes, I remember her. A beat." She wasn't alone. My stomach tightened. Was it a man? The woman hesitated, then nodded. "Tall, dark coat, maybe mid-50s. He seemed tense, and she looked afraid of him." A cold current rolled through my veins. "What did they talk about?" I asked. The barista lowered her eyes. "I don't know all of it, but at one point she said..." She paused, as if afraid to repeat it. "You can't take him from us." My breath caught. Us. She meant Ethan. She meant our family. "And what did the man say?" I whispered. The barista swallowed. "He said you should have told your husband years ago. He deserved to know." My jaw clenched. It wasn't just a threat. It was a punishment. A weapon meant to cut all our 3 of us. "Did he ever come back?" I asked. "Yes," she whispered. "The day before she died." My pulse hammered. "The day before?" She nodded. "He sat alone at that back table for almost an hour. Didn't order anything. When Emma didn't show up, he got angry. Really angry. Then he left." "Did he say anything?" She hesitated. "Just one sentence. Gave me chills." I leaned in. "What did he say?" She looked into my eyes. I won't let her keep him from me this time. A pressure expanded behind my ribs. This time. Meaning he had tried before. Meaning Emma fought him before. Meaning her entire life with me was lived under the shadow of a man who didn't want love. He wanted ownership. "Do you know where he went?" I asked. "No." But she reached under the counter. "Your wife left this." She handed me a small napkin. Emma's handwriting. Faint but unmistakable. "If anything happens to me, follow the number." Underneath was a phone number, but not the one I called earlier. My pulse quickened. "Did he see her write this?" I asked. The barista shook her head. She slipped it to me on her way out 2 days before she died. She looked terrified. She told me, "If something happens, give this to my husband. I didn't know if I'd ever see you." I inhaled a shaky breath. Emma had prepared for this. She had been fighting for us long before the truth came to me. "Thank you," I whispered. She nodded with sad eyes. "Be careful." That man, something about him didn't feel right. I left the cafe with the napkin trembling in my hand. Back in the car, I dialed the new number. This time it rang 4 times before someone answered. A woman's voice. Soft, steady, older. Hello? I blinked, thrown off. I'm looking for someone. I think he used this number. A pause. Then, oh, you must be John. My blood froze. Who are you? I'm the only person your wife trusted with the whole story. The world narrowed to a single point. You knew Emma. Yes, the woman said gently. She came to me when the man resurfaced. She was scared. She needed advice. She needed safety. She needed someone who wasn't involved. I tried to steady my breath. And who are you to him? I asked. The woman sighed. I'm his sister. I gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. His sister. The man who threatened my wife. The man who wanted Ethan. The man who pushed her into a corner. She could not escape. I think we should meet, she said softly. There are things you need to know. Things Emma didn't have the time to tell you. I closed my eyes. Where? The woman hesitated, and then she said the last place I ever expected. The hospital where she died. My pulse stumbled. Why there? I whispered. Because that's where everything started, she said quietly. And where everything ended. A chill ran through my spine. When can you meet? Tonight, she replied. If you want the truth. I whispered I do. But the woman added one last sentence, a sentence that tightened every muscle in my chest. John, before we meet, you should know this. Your wife didn't die alone. The hospital looked different at night. Quieter. More hollow. As if every unspoken grief in its walls rose to the surface after the sun set. I parked near the entrance, the same entrance I had walked through the morning Emma died. I remembered the coldness of the tile floor, under my shoes, the way the nurse avoided my eyes, the way time folded in half when they told me she was gone. Now I returned not for answers from doctors, but from someone who claimed to know the truth. Emma never had time to say. A woman waited under the lamppost. She was older, maybe late 50s, with silver strands in her hair, and a face that carried too many nights without sleep. She held her coat tightly around her, and her eyes flicked up when I approached. You must be John, she said softly. I nodded. And you're his sister. Her expression tightened at the mention of her brother, just slightly, as if the word itself carried too much weight. Yes. She extended a hand, not confident, not warm, but trembling slightly. My name is Margaret. We shook hands. Her fingers were cold. Why here? I asked quietly. Why meet at the hospital? Margaret looked toward the dark windows of the building, her eyes softening with something like regret. Because this is where your wife tried to tell the truth, and where she chose not to. The wind moved through the trees behind us. Something inside my chest shifted uneasily. What truth? I whispered. She inhaled slowly, as if preparing herself. John Mowa, my brother, didn't just come back into Emma's life because he wanted money or control. That's only part of the story. The part he tells when he wants people to fear him. My jaw tightened. What's the other part? Margaret's eyes lowered. He came back because he's dying. The world stood between us like a stone. A long silence followed. Finally, I managed. What? My brother has an aggressive condition, one that's been eating away at him for years, she continued. He didn't tell Emma right away, But when he realized he might not live long, he wanted something he'd never had. Not money, not power. Her voice softened. He wanted a family. My chest tightened. He wanted Ethan, I whispered. Margaret nodded sadly. He convinced himself that Ethan was his last chance at meaning. His last chance at being remembered. He thought if he could force the truth out, he could force a bond that was never real. I felt a tremor rise up my spine. He threatened Emma, I said quietly. Yes, Margaret whispered. Because that's how he deals with fear. He manipulates. He pushes. He intimidates. He's been like that since we were children. Everything he touches, he tightens until it breaks. I exhaled shakily, and Emma, I asked. How did she respond when he told her? Margaret closed her eyes briefly. She panicked. She told him she'd pay anything to keep him away. But he didn't want money anymore. He told her he wanted to meet Ethan. As his real father, he said. Anger flashed in my chest, sharp and blinding. Margaret sighed. It was cruel of him. Cruel and delusional. Emma tried to reason with him. She begged him not to do this to her family. But he saw her fear as leverage. My hands curled into fists. He kept coming back, I whispered. Yes. Why didn't she tell me? The question escaped before I could stop it. Margaret looked at me with the kind of sadness that comes from recognizing someone else's breaking point. Because she thought you'd walk away from her. She thought she'd lose both of you if the truth came out. She believed that dying quietly was the only way to protect you. I felt the world tilt slightly. I steadied myself on the railing beside us. Margaret hesitated before continuing. There's something else you should know. Something she did here. My heartbeat stumbled. In the hospital, I whispered. Margaret nodded. She came here 2 days before she died. She asked to speak with a social worker about a protective order. She wanted to legally prevent my brother from approaching Ethan. My breath caught. Emma had been fighting for us even when she was falling apart. Did she file it? I asked. She tried. Margaret swallowed. But she didn't meet the criteria. She didn't have proof, yet only fear. And fear doesn't hold up in paperwork. I closed my eyes, feeling something hot burn behind them. What happened after she left? Margaret hesitated. She came to see me. I opened my eyes slowly. Why? Margaret looked away, her voice lowering. Because I'm the only person who ever stood up to him. A quiet grief washed across her face. She begged me to talk to him, to make him stop, to convince him he would ruin a family that was never his to begin with. What did you tell her? I asked. The answer came with a long, steady sadness. I told her I would try. But I also told her my brother listens to no one until he loses something he thought belonged to him. The implication hit me like a punch. Emma knew there was no negotiating with him. Margaret's voice softened. Johnums, your wife spent her last 2 days running from a man who refused to let her protect her family. She wasn't just scared. She was cornered. She was exhausted. A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't want to die. She wanted peace for you and your son. And she believed her absence would be the only thing strong enough to make my brother leave you both alone. I let out a slow, broken breath. Where is he now? I finally asked. Margaret's expression changed. Not fear, not regret, but something darker. That's why I called you, she whispered. He went missing the same night Emma died. My stomach dropped. What do you mean, missing? He disappeared. No calls, no messages. He left his apartment unlocked. His car was found abandoned 2 towns over. A cold shiver crawled up my spine. Margaret took a shaky breath. And the last person he was seen with, she looked directly into my eyes, was your wife. The world spun. My breath stopped. Every sound around me faded into nothing. What are you saying? I asked, voice barely audible. Margaret's chin trembled. I'm saying, John, Emily didn't only die that night. She stepped closer, lowering her voice to a faint whisper. Something else, someone else, died with her. For a long moment, I couldn't process what Margaret had just said. The words floated in the cold night air, heavy, impossible, unreal. Something else died with her. I felt my throat tighten as my mind tried to shove the thought away, but it wouldn't budge. It stood there, staring back at me like a shadow I'd walked beside for years without noticing. Finally, my voice found its way out, rough and trembling. Are you telling me Emma killed him? Margaret shook her head immediately. No, that's not what I'm saying. She paused, choosing her next words carefully. I'm saying your wife was the last person seen with my brother, and after that night, he never contacted anyone again. My heartbeat thudded unevenly. So what happened to him? Margaret looked toward the hospital entrance, her eyes clouded. That's the question no one can answer. Not the police, not me, not even Emma's last message. Her last message. My breath hitched. What message? Margaret reached into her coat and pulled out a folded piece of paper, a page torn from a notebook. She held it for a moment, as if debating whether to give it to me. When she visited me that day, she whispered, she left this behind. I didn't understand it then. I still don't fully understand it now, but I think she meant it for you. She placed the paper into my hand. It was light, too light for something that carried so much weight. Read it, she urged softly. I unfolded it. Emma's handwriting shaky, pressed, too hard, rushed. If he doesn't stop, I will. I won't let him take our son, even if the world never knows why. My spine tingled. The wind grew colder, brushing through the empty spaces between words. I confronted her. Margaret murmured. I begged her not to do anything reckless. I told her my brother was sick, unstable, unpredictable, but also dying. I told her he'd run out of time to hurt anyone. My hands clenched around the paper. And what did she say? I whispered. She said. Margaret exhaled shakily, eyes glistening. He still has enough time to destroy my family. My chest tightened painfully. Emma had been alone in this nightmare, running from a man trying to claim Ethan, running from the truth she feared would fracture us, running from guilt she didn't deserve. What happened that night? I managed. Margaret pressed her lips together before answering. He called me around 7 p.m., she said. Sounded erratic. He told me he was going to see Emma one last time. He said he wouldn't leave, empty-handed. My stomach turned. And after that, Margaret shook her head slowly. That was his last phone call to anyone. A silence settled over us, thick, trembling. You think Emma met him? I whispered. I know she did, Margaret replied. Because he left behind something else. She reached into her coat again and handed me a second item. A phone, not a modern one. An old model cracked screen. Nearly dead battery. This was found in his abandoned car, she said. Locked. Hidden. The police didn't see much in it, but they never opened the deleted folder. Deleted folder? I asked. Yes, I kept it. I never knew what was inside, but I believed one day someone would. My pulse hammered as I turned on the phone. It flickered weakly. Battery at 3%. A simple interface appeared. I opened the Photos app. Empty. I opened Messages. Empty. I opened Voice Memos. Empty. Then I saw it. Recently deleted one. One item. One recording. My fingers trembled as I tapped it. A file appeared. EM last night. My heart stuttered. Emma. Play it, Margaret whispered. The wind seemed to hush the world going still around us. I pressed to play. Static crackled at first. Then voices. Faint, distant, but unmistakable. Emma's voice. And a man's. My hands shook as I lifted the phone closer. Emma, you can't take him. He's my son. Man, he's mine too. And he deserves to know. Emma, he deserves a life without you. Man laughing softly. You can't stop me, Emma. You never could. Emma, I'm not stopping you for me. I'm stopping you for him. For John. Man, John, he doesn't know the truth. He doesn't know anything. Emma's breath hitched, sharp breaking. Emma, he knows enough to love him. That's more than you'll ever understand. Then the man's tone changed, harsher, colder. Man, if you walk away now, I'll go to Ethan myself. There was a scuffle on the recording footsteps, maybe movement, and Emma crying out softly. Emma, please don't do this. Man, you can't stop the truth. A long pause. Then Emma's voice, low, determined, trembling. Emma, then neither can you. The recording ended abruptly. I stared at the phone, breath frozen. Margaret watched me with a haunted expression. That's all there was, she whispered. I don't know what happened after that moment, but that was the last trace of either of them before your wife was taken to emergency care. A storm roared inside my chest. Fear, rage, grief, love, loss, all twisting together into something sharp and unbearable. Do you understand now? Margaret whispered. She wasn't running from a mistake. She was running from a man who wanted to claim her child. And in the end, she was beneath for you both, with the last pieces of herself. I closed my eyes, overwhelmed. When I opened them again, Margaret's voice lowered even further, becoming almost a confession. But there's something else the police never found. She stepped closer. The place where they met that night wasn't here. My breath caught. It wasn't the cafe either, she added. I stared at her. Then where I whispered. Margaret's next words tightened everything inside me into a single trembling knot. They met at your house, John. They met at your house, John. The sentence that didn't just land, it split something inside me. For a moment, the hospital parking lot blurred the night lights, melting into streaks of gold and white. My home, the place I spent decades building with Emma, had suddenly become the scene of something I couldn't yet name. My house, I whispered. Margaret nodded, her expression tight. That's why I came today, she said. Not just to give you the recording, not just to tell you my brother's side of the truth, but because the police never searched your home. They assumed everything happened before she arrived at work that morning. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. Margaret, I said slowly, how do you know they met there? Her breath trembled. Because I followed my brother that night. Silence slammed between us. She wrapped her coat tighter, guilt flickering across her face. "I knew he wasn't stable," she murmured. "I knew he was desperate, unpredictable, and angry at the world. I told myself I was protecting him. But the truth is, I was trying to stop him from doing something he couldn't undo." My fingers tightened around Emma's note. "And did you?" I asked softly. Margaret shook her head. "No, I was too late." My throat closed. "What happened?" "The night everything unraveled." She stared out toward the dark strip of road leading away from the hospital, as if replaying each painful step. "He parked 2 houses down from yours," she said. "Engine off, headlights off, like he'd done it before. I thought he was going to talk to her, maybe beg, maybe threaten. I wasn't sure. But I never imagined," her voice cracked. "I never imagined Emma would open the door." My chest tightened painfully. "She opened it?" I asked, barely breathing. "Yes," Margaret whispered. "And when she saw him, she didn't yell. She didn't panic. She led him inside, quietly, like she'd expected him." A cold breath escaped my lungs. Emma, preparing for a confrontation alone, to protect our son, to protect me. "What did they talk about?" I asked. Margaret shook her head. I stayed outside. But through the window, I saw their silhouettes, tense, arguing, moving around. He gestured wildly. She held her ground. She was shaking, but she didn't back down. My eyes burned. Emma never told me. She carried that fear alone. She fought that fight alone. And then Margaret's voice faltered. They moved deeper into the house. I lost sight of them. The last footsteps. When he came out, she continued, "It was just after midnight. He walked fast, almost running. His face was pale. He got into his car and drove off. I tried to follow, but he sped onto the highway, and that was the last time I saw him alive." My stomach hollowed. "And Emma?" I whispered. Margaret swallowed hard. "I don't know how she got from your house to her office that next morning. I don't know what happened between midnight and sunrise. But when she arrived at work, she looked destroyed. Like she hadn't slept in years. Like she'd seen something she could never Tears pricked my eyes. She kept touching her wrist, Margaret added softly, like something hurt her, or someone grabbed her. A pulse of dread rippled through me. "Why didn't she come home?" I whispered. "She was afraid," Margaret said. "Afraid that if she told you the truth, everything would crumble. Afraid of what my brother might do next. Afraid that the only way to keep your family intact was to carry the secret alone. Emma, my Emma, walking into danger to protect us, and dying with the truth locked behind her teeth. The return. Come with me," I said suddenly. Margaret blinked, where I turned toward the parking lot. My house. Because if Emma had fought her last battle there, I needed to stand where she stood. I needed to breathe the same air she breathed. I needed to feel what she felt in those final hours. Margaret hesitated, then nodded. The door she left open. When we arrived, the house felt unfamiliar, like a stranger wearing something I used to love. I unlocked the door slowly. The living room was dark, still untouched. And yet I felt the weight of footsteps that had long since faded. Margaret followed behind me cautiously. "She let him in here," she whispered. I nodded, scanning the room. Nothing looked different, but something felt wrong. The light, I murmured. It's usually turned off when she sleeps. Margaret looked around. What are you searching for? I don't know, I admitted. But she left something behind. She must have. We walked deeper into the house. My hand brushed the hallway wall, and I froze. A faint, nearly invisible scrape ran along the paint. Fresh. Vertical. Margaret, I whispered. Look. She stepped close, inhaling sharply. That's not from furniture, she whispered. No, I said. That's from someone being pushed or grabbed. My heart thudded. We followed the scrape down in the hallway until it vanished near the edge of the bedroom doorframe. I pressed my palm against the wood. Cold. Too cold. Inside the room, everything remained exactly as I left it after the funeral, except for one thing. On Emma's side of the bed, the blanket was pulled slightly off the corner, barely noticeable. But when I lifted it, a small object glinted underneath. A silver chain bracelet. Broken. My breath caught. That's my brother's, Margaret whispered, her hand flying to her mouth. I turned it over in my palm. Cold metal. A snapped clasp. A scratch across the surface, as if it had been torn from someone's wrist. John! Margaret's voice trembled. Do you know what this means? I did. I knew it too well. He hadn't just visited. He hadn't just argued. He had grabbed her. She fought him. Inside our home. Alone. I sank onto the edge of the bed, the bracelet dangling from my fingers. Margaret's voice broke into a whisper. There's more. I looked up. What more? She stepped toward the window, pointing at the narrow ledge beneath it. Look. I approached slowly. There, faint, almost erased by dust, were two sets of footprints leading out the window and into the side yard. One small, one heavier. Emma and him. My head spun. John, Margaret whispered, I think she ran. Ran from a man threatening to take her child. Ran from someone who wanted to reveal a truth she wasn't ready to face. Ran and never made it back home. My throat tightened painfully as the final, unbearable question formed. If she ran, why didn't she come to me? Margaret looked at me with a grief that wasn't hers alone. 'Cause John, sometimes a woman loves her family so fiercely, she'd rather disappear than let the truth destroy it. The world tilted, and then she added softly, but the truth didn't die with her. I stared at her. Well, what are you saying? She hesitated, then whispered, There's something else Emma hid. Something about Ethan. And it's time you finally knew. The truth didn't die with her, John. It's written in your son. The words hit harder than anything that came before. Harder than the bracelet in my hand. Harder than seeing Emma's shadow still living inside the house we built. Harder than the recordings and confessions and the footprints beneath the window. My son, I whispered. Ethan's name suddenly felt too heavy for my throat. Margaret nodded slowly. This is the part Emma was trying to protect. I stood frozen in the middle of the bedroom, feeling the walls closing in, like the house itself was waiting for a truth it had been forced to hold for too long. What about Ethan? I asked. Tell me. Margaret's eyes softened in a way that scared me. It's not what you think, she said, but it is what Emma feared. I sank down on the edge of the bed again, the same spot where she used to read every night, wrapped in the soft blanket that now felt like a stranger's skin. Margaret, just tell me. She took a breath. My brother didn't come here to to expose an affair. He wasn't here because he wanted Emma back. He knew she didn't love him. He came because he found something. Something he thought was his, but wasn't. I stared at her cold, rising from somewhere deep. She continued, "He believed Ethan wasn't your son." Silence. Then my pulse thundered in my ears, what I breathed. "He believed Ethan was his," Margaret said quietly. "But he was wrong." The room spun. She stepped closer and placed a folder on the bed. "He did a DNA test behind Emma's back. It came out negative. Ethan wasn't his. But instead of letting it go, he became obsessed. He said Emma had robbed him of a life, robbed him of a family. He convinced himself she had lied to him for years." I shut my eyes, so he confronted her. I whispered, "Yes." And when she refused to let him near Ethan, he snapped. He told her he'd make sure you both knew the truth. He wanted to punish her not because of love, but because of rejection. My hands shook. All she cared about, Margaret said softly, was making sure Ethan never found out someone like him had once been part of her life. She wasn't protecting her secret. She was protecting her child. I swallowed hard. "She carried that fear alone," I murmured. "She did," Margaret said gently. "She didn't want Ethan growing up with a shadow. And she didn't want you thinking she ever betrayed your marriage. She didn't. Not once." A breath escaped me, shaky, broken, disbelieving. "She loved you, John," Margaret whispered. "Even in her fear. She loved only you." The search for what she left behind. Margaret opened the small folder. Inside was a letter sealed. On the front, written in Emma's handwriting, "For John, if I don't make it back." My vision blurred. "She never had the courage to give it to you," Margaret said. "But she kept it with her every day after that night." My fingers trembled as I opened the letter. Emma's handwriting trembled across the page. "John, if you are reading this, it means I failed at keeping the darkness away from our family. But I need you to know one thing before anything else. Ethan is yours. He has only ever been yours. My past came knocking at our door, and I wasn't strong enough to face it alone. I didn't tell you because I didn't want you to see me through his shadow. I didn't want our son to ever feel unwanted or tainted by someone who never truly cared for him. If I don't come home, please, don't let Ethan grow up thinking I left him. I ran because I was trying to keep him safe. And I kept the truth from you because I trusted your love more than my fear. I'm sorry. I couldn't say this to your face. But I love you, Emma." I pressed the letter to my forehead as my chest caved inward. She wasn't running from me. She wasn't hiding guilt. She was hiding pain. A pain she believed would ruin the two people she loved more than anything on earth. And now she was gone. And all that remained were echoes of the truth she couldn't carry anymore. Ethan walks in. The front door, boom, opened behind us. "Dad?" Ethan's voice. I quickly wiped my face. He stepped into the room, his eyes moving from me to Margaret. "Well, why is she here? What's going on?" I held the letter tightly in my hand. "Ethan," I said softly, "we need to talk." He looked nervous, like he already sensed a storm. I motioned for him to sit beside me. When he did, I placed Emma's letter gently in his hands. This is from your mom," I whispered. His lips parted. He unfolded it slowly, reading each line with trembling breaths. Halfway through, he broke. "Dad," he choked. She thought she didn't deserve us. I pulled him against my chest. No, I whispered into his hair. She loved us so much, she tried to keep every bit of darkness away. She carried the weight so we wouldn't have to. He sobbed harder. I didn't even get to say goodbye, he whispered. I swallowed everything inside me. You say goodbye. By living, I said softly. By choosing peace where she carried fear. By choosing honesty where she carried silence. He wiped his eyes. What about him? He whispered. The man who came here? I looked at Margaret. She shook her head gently. He's gone, she said softly. But his shadow ends here. I turned back to Ethan. He has no place in your life, I said steady. You're my son. Always have been. Always will be. His face collapsed into relief and grief all at once. I was so scared, he whispered. I know, I murmured. I was too, Bow. The stoic detonation point. Final silence. That night, when the house finally quieted, I walked alone into the hallway. My fingers brushed the faint scratch on the wall, the mark left by her last night inside this home. I didn't cry, not this time. Instead, I whispered into the silence. I see you now, Emma. All of it. All the fear you carried. All the love you hid. All the battles you fought alone. A soft wind moved the curtains, like the house itself exhaled, after years of holding its breath. I opened the window where the footprints had been. Cool night air swept across my face, and for the first time since the funeral, the truth didn't feel like a punishment. It felt like a promise. To pardon the son she loved. To forgive the woman I lost too soon. And to carry her story, not as a wound, but as a warning of what silence can cost. And I closed my eyes and whispered, rest now. We'll finish what you started. And the house, for the first time in a long time, felt like home again.